On this edition of Paranet Bizcast, we have Harry Stratton, Chairman and CEO of Strattec Security Corporation, as well as Kathy Scherbarth, Vice President of Operations in Milwaukee. So what have you learned? What have you done differently over this year?
We did a lot of blocking and tackling that I think most companies did during the last year or 18 months. And that involved just tailoring our workforce as best we could to the actual demand that was out there. And there were some periods starting at about a year ago this time when there was no demand. I mean, we basically went down to zero in a lot of the production that we do for our automotive customers. And there was a continuation of that into the beginning of this calendar year, and then again just prior to or just after the bankruptcy proceedings. And those were very trying times. It forced us to do a lot of things to reduce employment, particularly in the hourly group that represents the production that we produce, and in the salaried side as well, because we didn't feel that we could support having them work full time. So we had to do some creative things in terms of asking them to take unpaid vacation and miscellaneous furlough days over a period of time. We cut back salaries. We took away 401k matches. We did a lot of things that internally reduced the flow of cash so that we could conserve our cash resources during those bad times, which we were able to do, thankfully. And so we didn't have to go borrow money, which was hard to get anyway, particularly if you were in the participating like we are in the auto industry. And it was just a lot of little things that we did to try and keep the ball rolling, but survive the bad news that we were hearing all the time, every day. Mm-hmm. So it was critical.
Do you have anything to add, Kathy?
No, I was just going to say that many of the things that we had to confront this past year, especially for the salary workforce, were things that we had never taken on before. The pay or time without pay came at a time that we were also trying to launch some new product for us. So we ended up basically trying to balance the need to not spend cash with the fact that we really needed to get out in front of some things. So it was, you asked the question, Kelly, what did we learn? I think we learned that we could do some things that we had never really comprehended before, especially with the salary workforce. And I think we also learned to do them relatively quickly, which became important as the year went on.
Well, and I know you needed the union to make some very serious concessions. How did that negotiation go? That must have been very trying.
The negotiations actually went very well. Mm-hmm. There is, anytime you ask a group of people, whether they're a represented group of people or a non-represented group of people, to give up something that they believe they have a right to, you have to do that from the perspective that you have to help them understand why the change was necessary. Harry mentioned we needed to control cost, and the discussions that we had with the union, the opening of the contract, basically was from the perspective that we needed to go after some legacy costs, specifically health care and pension. And those issues were issues for both the hourly workforce and the salary workforce. So those discussions, because by way of background, we had really just negotiated a 4-year contract in 2008. So our workforce felt relatively stable. For us to come to them 15 months later and say we needed to open and have a serious discussion about economics took a lot of communicating carefully about what the issues really were. But I'm pleased to hear now and say that though they were tough negotiations, but they were negotiations over issues that were real, and they were serious for the business, and they have longer term ramifications. So it was an interesting process, not like typical negotiations.
I guess I'd add to that the union representatives, I think, were very cognizant of the circumstances that were presented by the whole economic travail that we were experiencing, and what they were seeing with what we brought up to them, they were seeing at other companies in dealing with that, and to their credit, recognized that the issues were very significant to the future of the business and jobs. So they stepped up to the plate and really did. They negotiated, but they negotiated on facts and really did a pretty nice job.
Yeah, I can honestly say that this was a discussion on both sides of the table, proverbially, where people's long-term best interest is really what we were talking about. And I genuinely think we're positioned now much more solidly. Certainly, our represented workforce is positioned much more solidly as we look out over the next 4 or 5 years.